Imagine fielding a military of 1.4 million active troops, only to realize that the next major conflict might be decided before a single rifle is ever fired.
Right, because physical borders, they're almost secondary now.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, we are stepping into a battle space that is just invisible, instantaneous, and constantly shifting.
It's a completely radical paradigm shift. Historically, we've looked at warfare through this lens of geography.
Like you conquer a hill, you hold a port, you secure a border.
Yeah, exactly. But the physical domain is just no longer the sole or even the primary arena of strategic defense.
And that is exactly what we're unpacking
Yeah.
today. So welcome to this deep dive. We are synthesizing a massive stack of sources for you today, ranging from the 2024-25 Indian defense budget to geopolitical white papers, right down to on-the-ground startup reports.
And we're treating this session like a war room briefing. This isn't just casual chat. Our mission today is to extract the underlying governance and security frameworks from these materials so you are fully equipped to write, well, high-scoring analytical evaluations on India's defense tech landscape.
Because navigating this shift from, an arms importer to true strategic autonomy, it's incredibly complex.
It is, especially with the sheer scale of the Indian military. For decades, the system was built around a very human-centric approach.
Right.
But the nature of warfare has shifted to this technology-driven hybrid model. And for India, this connects directly to the massive governance push toward Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance.
So to really understand these policies, we first have to map the battlefield.
Yeah, let's lay the background layer.
Right. So looking at the history of conflict, it was all territorial. You had
Yeah.
the land domain, obviously. Then we moved into the sea domain to, project power.
Control global trade route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Wright brothers came along. We conquered the air domain. And then space emerged as the fourth domain.
Which is the ultimate high ground. I mean, we rely on space entirely for surveillance, early warning, navigation.
But the most critical evolution, the one that redefines everything, is the fifth domain.
The cyber and electromagnetic spectrum, or EMS.
Yeah, the EMS. I've been thinking about this a lot while reading the sources. And I like to picture the EMS as an invisible nervous system.
Oh, good analogy.
Right, because unlike land or sea, the electromagnetic spectrum interacts with every single one of the other domains simultaneously.
It really is a nervous system, and it forms the foundation of what strategists call multi-domain operations, or MDO.
Right.
If an adversary takes down that nervous system, say they jam your radar frequencies or breach your cyber networks, your physical assets are neutralized.
So your billion-dollar stealth jet is just flying blind.
Exactly. The ships, the tanks, they can't communicate, they can't use GPS, they can't lock onto targets. The hardware is useless.
Wow.
You don't need to destroy a tank if you can just scramble its targeting software from 1,000 miles away.
Okay, so how does this invisible nervous system actually translate to the hardware on the ground? Like, let's talk about the modern arsenal.
Right. Let's get into the facts and interlinking here. The sources outline a baseline of conventional tech: rifles, battle tanks, fighter jets, submarines.
But the focus is on how those are altered by emerging tech. Take artificial intelligence. We're not talking about, like, generative AI writing emails.
No, definitely not.
We're looking at things like the U.S. Army's Project Maven.
Maven is a perfect example to quote in your answers. Before AI, you had human operators staring at drone video feeds for, 14 hours straight.
Just trying to spot a tiny anomaly.
Exactly. But with AI, the system analyzes millions of pixels in real time, instantly highlighting targets. It compresses the entire kill chain.
And then you add hypersonics into the mix. A hypersonic weapon travels at Mach 5 or faster.
5 times the speed of sound.
Right, like Russia's Kinzhal missile.
Mm.
But it's not just the speed, it's how that speed breaks traditional physics. Normal missile defense relies on predictable ballistic arcs.
Right, you calculate where it will be and fire an interceptor.
But hypersonics are maneuverable. The radar map completely fails. You have literal seconds to react.
And while you have these incredibly fast weapons, you also have the Internet of Military Things, or IOMT.
Linking sensors to weapons.
Exactly, a massive web of situational awareness, which sets the stage for drones and robotics, like the MQ-9B Predator drones.
Or the MUL U-bots the Indian Army is procuring, right, to carry supplies and keep soldiers out of harm's way.
All shielded by stealth tech, like the F-22 and F-35, avoiding electronic detection.
Okay, wait. Let me play devil's advocate here based on the sources. These technologies are incredible,
Right.
but how does India intend to actually secure them?
Ah, the structural problem.
Yeah, because historically we've been a massive arms importer. You can't just buy your way to strategic autonomy.
No, you can't. And that friction is the core of the government's response framework. You have to look at the legacy hurdles. India's defense industrial base was essentially from the 1940s.
Relying on the Ordnance Factories Board, the OFB.
Right, a sluggish government monopoly. You can't build 21st century stealth with 1940s bureaucracy.
There was just no incentive to innovate.
Which is why June 2021 is a landmark year to underline. The government dismantled the OFB.
And transformed it into 7 distinct defense public sector undertakings, or DPSUs.
Exactly. By corporatizing them, you introduce profit and loss. You force them to operate like modern businesses.
But that alone doesn't build weapons.
Yeah.
You need capital, and you need the military to actually buy locally.
This is where the policy matrix of Atmanirbhar Bharat comes in. You
Yeah.
need to jot these schemes down.
Right, getting into the exam prep mode here.
Yes. So we have the defense industrial corridors in UP and Tamil Nadu. We have the DPPP to reduce import dependency, and the Technology Development Fund, the TDF, for indigenous R&D.
And the strategic partnership model, right, the SPM.
For joint ventures and tech transfer, yes. But the most aggressive tool is the positive indigenization lists, or PILs.
I love the mechanism behind the PILs. It sounds like just an import ban, but economically it's brilliant.
Walk us through why it's so effective.
Well, a domestic investor isn't going to spend billions building a high-tech plant in India if the military can just buy a cheaper system from France.
The risk is way too high.
Right. But with PILs, the government legally bans the import of specific items. It creates a captive, risk-free market.
It's the ultimate demand signal.
Exactly. And the data proves it's working. Here's a massive data anchor you need to remember. India is now in the top 25 defense exporting countries.
Hitting an all-time high of roughly over 16,000 crore in the 2022-23 fiscal year.
Exporting heavily to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Africa.
That is a staggering jump. But let's transition to the critical evaluation layer here.
Yeah, the reality check.
Yeah.
Because 16,000 crore is great, but what are the realistic limitations holding back this Viksit Bharat vision?
The most glaring constraint is the budget. The 2024-25 defense budget is about $75 billion.
Wait, let me pause you. 75 billion is huge. European nations struggle to hit 2% of GDP. Why do our sources frame India's 1.9% of GDP allocation as a severe constraint?
Because of the unique strategic reality, India doesn't have a NATO umbrella. It faces a volatile two-front scenario with China and Pakistan. And with 1.4 million troops, a massive chunk of that 75 billion goes to payroll, pensions, and daily maintenance, not cutting-edge R&D.
So modernizing a legacy military while building a new industrial base on 1.9% of GDP, that is a very tight needle to thread.
Extremely tight, especially when you need parity with China. Despite Atmanirbhar Bharat, India still relies on imports for critical tech, like jet engines and air defense systems.
And there's a huge R&D deficit, right? Very low researcher density. Plus, the industry is heavily dominated by PSUs.
Which brings us to the biggest bottleneck, the MSME and startup sector.
It is so frustrating to read about. You have these brilliant Indian startups building world-class AI or drone tech, and they're starving for government orders.
The red tape is choking them.
Yeah, the sources mentioned that archaic certification processes and foreign lobbies are actively hindering them from entering the supply chain.
If a startup has to wait 3 years for certification while bleeding venture capital, they die. The self-reliance model just stalls at the administrative level.
So, synthesizing this for an exam answer, how do we convert all this into a high-scoring 250-word structure?
Okay, get your pens ready. Start with the context. Frame it around the shift to multi-domain operations and hybrid warfare.
Right, the invisible nervous system.
Then the dimensions. Highlight the institutional shift, like 7 DPSUs, and the policy tools, like the PILs and the strategic partnership model.
Got it. Then you move to the challenges.
Yes. The 1.9% GDP budget constraint, the urgent need for China parity, the reliance on imported jet engines, and that startup red tape.
And then the recommendations, or the way forward.
Here, use administrative vocabulary. We need institutional strengthening via private sector integration, aggressive technology adoption in R&D, and major regulatory reforms to cut the red tape for MSMEs.
And for the conclusion, you tie it back to the interlinking engine. Frame defense indigenization not just as manufacturing, but as the absolute cornerstone of India's strategic autonomy.
Exactly. It's about national security.
You know, the best metaphor I can think of is a nation's immune system. Buying foreign arms is like taking antibiotics. It cures the immediate infection, but the supply can be cut off.
Right, it's temporary.
But true strategic autonomy is building your own white blood cells. It takes time, but it protects the host body from within.
That's a great way to conceptualize it. Okay, let's fire off the final revision capsule to lock this in.
Let's do it. Rapid fire.
5 must-remember facts. 1. The budget is $75 billion, or 1.9% of GDP.
2. Defense exports hit roughly Rs 16,000 crore in 22-23.
3. The OFB was split into 7 DPSUs in June 2021.
4. The 5 domains of warfare are land, sea, air, space, and cyber EMS.
5. Hypersonic speeds equal Mach 5 or faster.
And what's the probable exam question here?
Critically evaluate India's transition from a defense importer to a strategic exporter in the context of the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative.
Perfect. And your 5 analytical keywords to underline are multi-domain operations, positive indigenization lists, strategic partnership models, strategic autonomy, and Internet of Military Things.
To summarize in 30 seconds, we are seeing a historic shift in hybrid warfare, driving India to overhaul its 1940s industrial base. Policies like DPEPP and PILs are forcing the domestic market to mature, but this is constantly weighed down by a 1.9 per city GDP budget and persistent R&D bottlenecks holding back startups.
It is a delicate balancing act. And before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final puzzle to ponder.
The invisible battle space.
Yeah. We started by talking about that invisible nervous system, the EMS and cyber domains that silently control everything.
The domain that interacts with all other domains.
Right. If the future of warfare relies heavily on AI, interconnected networks, and speeds that humans literally cannot react to, how does a nation secure its physical borders when the next major conflict could theoretically be won or lost in the digital ether long before a single conventional weapon is ever fired?
Think about that immune system.
Keep analyzing those policies, and we will catch you in the next deep dive.